the AUC this past February, I do not support the extrajudicial killing of peaceful, seated protesters. I do not support using millions of dollars in taxpayer funds to build another slap in the face to the Muscogee Nation on the site of their Weelaunee Forest. And anyone in this room who does support what I've just laid out should be ashamed to call themselves a public servant. If your goal is not evolution, move aside. I challenge each member of the City Council to devote their terms to our children instead of your wallets. I challenge you to act in the best interest of your constituents and the land of the Muscogee Nation, that Muscogee Nation, I'm so sorry, y'all, the Muscogee Nation that we so shamefully still have control over. Land back, by the way. I challenge you, ma'am, I look up at my face in the words of Tim Robinson, I challenge you to be a human being. Do it.
Next up is Jess King, followed by Gabriel Sanchez and Brandon Michon.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Jennifer. I live in the Westview neighborhood in Southwest Atlanta. My council person is Andrea Boone, daughter of civil rights icon, and she voted in favor of Cop City. During her re-election campaign, she made sure to tell my white neighbors that she voted against defunding the police. It's an interesting choice of words in 2021. She knows that this multi-million-dollar massive facility would be popular with people who she assumed would want to be upholding white supremacist ideals. She decided to campaign on it, but only to the whiteners. When peaceful protesters are facing 20 years in prison on domestic terrorism charges for distributing flyers, white supremacy ideals. When a mutual aid center is being raided by a SWAT team like a terrorist cell, it is upholding white supremacist ideals. When our city government is pushing through a deeply unpopular police militarization facility, which will result in disproportionately more black and brown people behind bars, or God forbid dead, it is upholding white supremacy ideals. We could be using this ever-ballooning budget to actually do some things to reduce crime, such as ensuring housing stability, expanding access to mental health care, but instead, you're upholding white supremacy ideals. Thank you.
Next up is Jess King. Jess King, followed by Gabriel Sanchez.
My name is Dash King, Dashneer King, but Dash for short. When you arrest 3 of us, you activate 300 more of us. Sadly, for all of you sitting up there, every time we come back, there are more of us. Our message is stronger, our message is louder, and our conviction is stronger. Because we are stronger and we are louder. The interesting thing about this movement is how widespread it is. Folks from different races, ages, body types, and socioeconomic background have all come together to fight against this evil thing that we call Cop City. And what's interesting is that in a lot of ways that's because of all of you. Well, you're not all up there, but you know. I've heard people come up here with their voices cracking, anxious, confused, and hurt, asking why you are not listening to us. But the truth is, y'all have heard us every single time. But I promise you, we can be louder. And the irony about outside agitators is that they do exist. Because on one hand, you have folks that have been driven out of Atlanta because it is so unaffordable. On the other hand, you have folks that have never been here but can recognize that a militarized cop training facility will only fuel arrests and policing and will continue to disproportionately impact Black and brown and queer and trans folks. And thousands of unhoused folks that Atlanta has repeatedly tried to disappear. I've seen people all over the world against this project because Atlanta is bigger than the people you see here today. This movement is bigger than the people that you see here today. And I hope that terrifies you. Every time you make us come back and give countless reasons why we don't want this, you will activate more of us. The people will not be silenced. We are ready to fight. Are you?
Next up is Gabriel Sanchez, followed by Brandon Michon and Elisa Gambino.
Point of information. So Brandon Michon had to leave early. He said that he had a statement prepared. Could I read a statement as well for 2 minutes? Or?
So my understanding is that you've got the 2 minutes that were assigned to your name because it wasn't transferred before. So
okay.
I'm sorry about that.
That's fine. Just a second. Okay. Hi, hello there. I'm Gabriel Sanchez. I'm a proud Colombian American born and raised here in Georgia and a member of Atlanta DSA. And I just want y'all to know that I've lived in Atlanta for 7 years, but I had to move out at the end of last year because I couldn't afford to live here anymore. When I did live here, I was in District 2, then District 4, and then District 1. And I've actually come back to District 1 a lot to talk to the community there. And as a comrade earlier told, 2/3 of the community that we talk to are against the facility. I want to highlight one woman, a Black woman named Chanel, who was a single mother working 2 jobs and was telling me how it's even with that, she can barely get by. And when I told her how much this facility was going to cost, she was distraught because she couldn't imagine that they're spending this much money on something that isn't going to help her family. Because what you all continue to ignore is that the best way to stop crime is to eliminate poverty and to put resources in the community. That's how you stop crime. Not wasting money on the biggest cop facility in the country. That is not how we are going to solve the problems that we have in Atlanta. And for those that are saying that this movement is somehow a white movement, which I completely disagree with, but if you still have that perception, maybe think about the fact that Black and brown people are disproportionately poor and working class and do not have the time and can't afford to come out here on a Monday. They have to work 2 to 3 jobs just to survive. So maybe you should be handling that problem instead of this pretend problem that you made up that isn't a real issue. Because this $67 million could go to affordable housing, healthcare, education, public transit, public green spaces, things that people actually need, infrastructure. The community does not want this. I thought we were in a democracy, but it seems some of the council members here who are supporting this didn't get the memo. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're representing the wealthy elite and the corporations instead of the people.
Thank you.
So,
thank you. Next up, Eloisa Gambino, followed by Matt Bass, who will have 4 minutes, and Sean Mosley.
Hi, my name is Elisa Gambino, and I'm a Buckhead resident. Mary Norwood is my council member, and I'd just like to say that I think we can all agree that we all want safe neighborhoods. I'm here in support of the people of this city who have worked tirelessly to shine a light on the morally corrupt, anti-democratic process that has brought us to today's tipping point. Crime, crime, crime. Councilmember Norwood, you love to talk about crime. It seems to be your superpower topic. When an elderly Buckhead resident was murdered in December, Councilmember Norwood sent out an email to her constituents offering, end quote, an opportunity to participate by sharing the video link for the arraignment of the person arrested. It felt like more fear-mongering. Last week, I went canvassing to Stop Cop City. I asked people if Atlanta had an extra $30 million, I didn't realize it was actually 67 at the time, how would you like the city to spend that money? The answers were better roads, better transportation, more programs for our kids, more staff at Bitsy Grant tennis courts. Nobody, not one, said they wanted more police training. None said they wanted cameras on every corner. None said they wanted police officers on every corner. which is the vision that APF CEO Dave Wilkinson promotes time and time again, a police state in Atlanta. I have since come to learn that the entire premise of my question was wrong, and it's $67 million. I hope my council member does not hold this position of continuing to want to support APF. I hope she decides to be a hero today. And I'd also like to close by saying that Council Member Shipman came to my house many years ago to look at the civil rights photographs that my father-in-law took, and that civil rights exist not only in a museum, they should exist for every single one of us. And they are so lacking in a country that's awash in the systemic racism that we've heard about today.
Thank you very much. Next
Stop
up
Cop
is
City.
Matt Bass. Next up is Matt Bass, who will have 4 minutes, followed by Sean Mosley, Akil Gregory, who will have 8 minutes.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Good evening. My name's Matt Bass. I'm a lawyer here in town. I own and operate my firm over in Eastlake. I'm also a yoga instructor. I teach in Candler Park. And I'm also a Baptist minister, and I've been one for more than 20 years. I'm also a proud member of the queer community. And I know several of you personally, based on that relationship, being part of that same community. And I've just got to tell you that police militarization is very much a queer issue. There are two examples. 1969, the thing that we commonly call the First Pride, indeed involved throwing rocks at police officers and burning shit. I think it's really important. While I cannot condone destruction of property or any sort of violent act towards any other human, I think it's vitally important that you look past any hang-ups that any of you have about what some people did wrong and make sure you don't miss the message. And that is that we're deeply concerned about the abuse of people like Tortuguita, right? We've got a dead queer person on our hands now, and y'all should really feel that in your soul. And I know some of you do. I think all of you probably do. But I need you to think twice about what that means for you as a queer person. And please stand up for our queer community. A second thing I want to point out today is this morning I was listening to National Public Radio, WABE, and I heard comments from Mr. Shipman and Councilperson Bakhtiari. And I really appreciated, I don't actually appreciate this, but I really appreciated them speaking the truth. I appreciate that part. And that was that they said there's a lack of transparency on the part of the APF. You guys, we really need to get a hold of this APF. You guys work for us, not for a police foundation, not for the corporate interests that fund the APF. And we need you to get a hold of it. If you guys are telling us that you don't have transparency, that's a problem. Please do something about it. Specifically, send this back to the committee until you get that transparency. Send this back to the committee until you get power and control over what I'm only going to call outside agitators, and that's the APF. This is my third point, and this is about outside agitation. So one of the things I do as a lawyer is volunteer my time as a legal observer. I've done that when we did the election recounts. I've done that at polls, doing my part to make sure people can vote. And I also do it at protests. And on March 5th, I went down to the Walani Forest to watch a protest. I stood there, and many of y'all know these woods well now. I stood there in the Radio Flyer Control Park. I was there for about 15 minutes before what I can only call the Keystone Cops showed up with their guns drawn, running around the field, creating a more dangerous situation. Instead of public safety, they were public endangerment. Among other things I watched them do was pull their guns out and poke them into a moon bouncy house. I watched them slash tents. Please let me, I appreciate it, please let me finish. I watched them slash tents. I watched them destroy protest signs. These were not acts of enforcement of laws. These were just destruction of property and violation of people's First Amendment rights. I've got to point out that I got so scared that night that I will not be going back to these protests, even to watch them. That's a chilling effect that has been imposed on people's First Amendment rights. So I ask you, please send this back to committee, gain control of the APF, and stop Cop City. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Sean Mosley. Is Sean Mosley here? Okay. Sean Mosley, I don't think so. All right. Akil Gregory for 8 minutes.
How long do I have?
8 minutes.
8 minutes? All right, perfect. I'm not going to use all of it, but first of all, I'd like to thank everybody who ceded their time to me, and I'll try to make good of it. I actually did know that Sean wasn't going to be here because we had stayed in line for several hours. I think I met him around 12 noon. I got here like 9:30, and he stayed until he had to leave because he had to pick up his kids. And that's a lot of people's stories. Even those who were able to make it could only stay for a certain amount of time because we have other things going on. So for those who are willing to stay all day, I haven't eaten since I left my house. To be here for this issue, that's how much it means to each and every one of us. And so to just get into it, I am Akil Gregory. I have been a resident of DeKalb County for the last 5 years. When I was staying in Atlanta, I was staying in East Atlanta. I was staying in Eastlake. So after leaving, I still was in the close proximity to the facility. So when I found out about Cop City coming about, it was more than alarming. So what I can do is offer context to where this facility fits in the grander scheme of our nation's history, not going so far back, but I'm just going to start 3 years back. So 2020, we had the largest protests in human history, and this was centered around stopping police brutality. So what links people from New York to Atlanta to LA to people in Kenya, in Nigeria, in London, and in the UK? Policing. This is not a particularly unique issue in Atlanta, but this next step in building Cop City is a real escalation in the matter and in the wrong direction, because what the mayor and the city council offered in the wake of these protests were platitudes and promises. So what that led to was the Rashad Brooks bill, which conveniently enough, the national situation became local for us when we saw another black man be killed unnecessarily. So this was supposed to be a reimagining policing in the city of Atlanta. The only thing we're imagining right now is where that policy went. We're left here with a facility that is already behind schedule, over budget, and against the wishes of most of us. And it's also convenient to me how I've been here since I've been listening to hearings since it started at 1. And so where did all the people for the facility go? They disappeared after 15 minutes. Haven't heard one person since the first 15 minutes. But that's beside the point. So platitudes and promises, and then we get this. And so what do we have for it? We got a $30 million price tag. That's what the city council is voting on today. We have heard the figure $67 million thrown around. From my understanding, that's due to a leaseback policy where $1.2 million would be allocated for the next 30 years. So that's more alarming than if y'all were doing $67 million up front, because not only can that increase, but also y'all are charging the next generation for this project. When it comes to the land that this is built on, I've heard a lot about the environmental racism, and it's very true. But the element that alarms me the most is the previous use of the property. It was a prison farm. And so if you have this prison farm property and you have most of the land likely not remediated, then the clear cutting of the forest is already putting DeKalb residents in danger in the present. And so I know people are throwing out a whole bunch of solutions to the matter. I don't have a whole lot of answers, but the first thing that needs to be done is restoring that forest. When it comes to the methods that people use to protest, The fact of the matter is that a lot of people are going unheard. And we can check respectability politics all day and all that other mess, but the fact of the matter is Tortuguita should be here today. The same policing policies that we are trying to change are what led to his death. That is a direct tie. And so when we're talking today now, contextualizing everything, I think I heard some mess about crime wave. What happened in the last 3 years? Between 2020, March of 2020 and March of 2022, America lost 1 million people to COVID. 1 million. This area, we lost thousands of residents to COVID. I'm not even getting into the rhetoric behind the crime wave, but I'm also understanding that none of us are all right now. None of us. And so when we have already made our case known for changing the way policing is done in this city, why are we back here? And the manner in which this whole public comment was conducted was, if not intentionally disruptive, callous of the council. Y'all knew we were coming. So what's the issue with the locked doors, the elevators not working, no water present? There are so many issues, even going into how people found out if they were speaking. There are some folks who signed up to speak who were in the building who didn't get the opportunity to speak because the doors were closed. And then y'all took like an hour or so to be able to get the list out so people knew that they were coming up next. None of that is okay. And so moving forward, what does this mean? What happens next depends on y'all. I am, as I said, a DeKalb County resident, have been for 5 years, but I was born and raised in Akron, Ohio, where in June of last year, we had lost Jalen Walker, 25 years old, to dozens of police bullets in his back. Totally unnecessary, but police departments tend to think of each other like McDonald's and Wendy's rather than part of the same franchise. So what I'm recognizing is that Cop City ties everything together, because now we don't get to just point out the local instances of police brutality. In the future, after voting for this, if y'all were to do so, we're going to look at whether or not the officers were trained here. We will continue to hold y'all accountable, whether or not y'all listen to us today. And just know that all the tactics that have been used to dissuade us will not work. Know that y'all picked the wrong opportunity to pick this facility, because people have been inside for the last 3 years. We outside now. So please do something else. There are 16 members of y'all council. We only need 8 or 9 to vote against it. Some of y'all already had y'all vote written on y'all face since the beginning of this session. That's fine. 9 people vote no for funding Cop City. 8 or 9. Vote no, please. That's all I have. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Next up is Jack Joyner. Next speaker is Jack Joyner, who has 4 minutes. Jack? Okay. And then after Jack Joyner is Mark Spencer, who will have 10 minutes.
Hello. My name is Jack Joyner, and I'm here to represent the Atlanta Justice Alliance. It is our great privilege to present a statement from our fellow activists Marlon Kautz, Savannah Peterson, and Adele McLean, the organizers of the ATL Solidarity Fund, who were cruelly and unlawfully arrested last Wednesday, May 31st, 2023. Marlon would have presented these remarks themselves, but they contracted an illness while in jail. These are their words. Last Wednesday, we woke up to the sound of our front door being broken down. Dozens of police with assault weapons and SWAT equipment surrounded our home in DeKalb County and threatened to throw a flashbang grenade into our living room. We, of course, surrendered peacefully and were taken to jail in our pajamas. It was a terrifying experience, which became even more surreal when we later learned the blatantly false charges offered by the police. We spent days in jail before a judge finally reviewed the allegations against us and acknowledged that the charges were questionable at best. Our charitable organization is far from fraudulent. We fastidiously respect the boundaries of the law. But in Atlanta in 2023, it seems that following the law is not enough to avoid being attacked by police. As we saw with the killing of Manuel Tortuguita Terán, there seems to be no limit to the violence police are willing to direct against those they see as political opposition. While sitting in jail, we learned that the timing of the attack on our home was carefully calculated for political effect. Statements by police confirmed that we were raided shortly before this very hearing, presumably to prevent us from participating or assisting activists whose rights were violated. If the Atlanta police and DeKalb DA Sherry Boston are strategically deploying violence against nonprofit organizations in order to interfere with public participation at city council hearings, what does that say about the of democracy in Atlanta? We should note that this attack has harmed many more people than just us. Our nonprofit organization, Network for Strong Communities, does more than just provide legal aid for protesters. It also facilitates the distribution of thousands of pounds of fresh produce every week to communities in need in Atlanta. Because of these trumped-up charges, our partners are now understandably scared to provide us food to distribute for fear of becoming Sherry Boston's next target. This campaign of intimidation is jeopardizing access to critical resources for some of the most vulnerable people in our city. Even though we are out of jail, we are still living in fear. This episode has shown us firsthand that no matter how civil our organizing, no matter how law-abiding our activities, we are not safe in this city. This issue has become bigger than us and bigger even than Cop City. It is about whether anyone is safe in Atlanta when they dare to oppose the agenda of the Atlanta Police Department. If you want to uphold this city's reputation as the birthplace of the civil rights movement, abuses of power to suppress protests cannot be tolerated. If City Council does not take a stand, the attacks and abuse by police and prosecutors will continue and escalate. How many more innocent people will be brutalized, jailed, even killed, all in the name of suppressing opposition to Cop City?
Mr. Joyner.
There is still time to fix this, to show that Atlanta really is a city which embraces protest, which values grassroots organizing.
Thank you, Mr.
Do
Joyner.
not let
Mr. Joyner.
Atlanta become a police state.
Thank you, Mr. Joyner. Next up is Mark Spencer. Next up is Mark Spencer, who has 10 minutes.
Hello. I won't be taking 10 minutes, so thank you for all that extra time. I've seen many of you before on the Close the Jail campaign. I hope that your ears will be more open than they were at that time. Mr. Bond, thank you for coming back. My name is Mark Spencer. I'm not here representing any institution, but I'm simply a physician who lives and works in Atlanta. I do represent a coalition of healthcare workers and students who study the impact of policing on health. We're deeply concerned about the city's possible investment in Cop City. Before we dive in, first, I'd like to address the firefighters. We recognize the benefits you bring to communities, and we support your work. We know that police are not necessary for it. We urge you to unlink yourself from the Atlanta Police Foundation and the Atlanta Police Department. Stop supporting a wildly unpopular and harmful project, and we will support you in obtaining a fire-specific training center not in the middle of a forest. When we talk about what enables healthy individuals and communities, the most important component are politically determined. It's not medicines, it's not surgeries, or lab tests, but the investments made in rooms like this that make up over 80% of health outcomes. We strongly oppose Cop City in the South River Forest, or anywhere for that matter, simply because the costs are too high. The environmental, the health, the financial, the safety, and the opportunity costs. In a city defined by profound racialized inequality, investments are needed urgently elsewhere. Here is what we know based on decades of public health evidence. Policing is rarely preventative. It is largely unrelated to crime rates. Any marginal safety benefit is far outweighed by the opportunity costs and direct consequences. This includes over 1,000 people murdered annually and over 75,000 visits to the emergency room from police violence every year. This also includes the damaging effects on health from the jails that the police fill. Just like a new jail or more jail space will not undo the harms of incarceration, a new Cop City will not change the harms of policing. It does not matter if the morale is high, if pay is high, how training is done or where training is done, if you give them a car or not, because policing is still policing. What we know is policing is the discretionary enforcement of some laws in some places against mostly poor people through state-sanctioned violence. Policing relies on criminalization, which we know negatively impacts the physical and mental health of individuals, their families, their children, and their communities. Criminalization is not about care, but a way of sorting who matters and who doesn't. Additionally, experiencing arrest lowers democratic participation. At a time Atlanta faces a democratic crisis with less than 20% of eligible voters filling the city council in front of us, it is clear that too many people do not see electoral politics as a way to materially improve their lives. In part, this is because they do not feel that you are listening. We cannot have healthy communities without healthy democracy. The only proven way to decrease police violence is to decrease interactions with the public. As healthcare workers, we want to be clear. We want alternatives to police, not rebranded police. We want alternative, specialized responses, not co-responses. We want non-police traffic enforcement. We want harm reduction, not the criminalization of our patients for substance use. The resources committed to caring for the most neglected, exploited, and vulnerable people in Atlanta are well below the scale needed. For example, it is great that the city is committing $55,000 to the transgender community. However, Atlanta is committing $18 million to its correctional budget that should not exist. This is over 300 times the investment. These $18 million belong to the John Lewis Center for Freedom and Equity, a promise broken by this council. Cop City is only the latest example of this council dragging us in the wrong direction on public safety. I would like to remind you that working in public office is not the same as being a public servant. It's well documented that policing contributes to intergenerational cycles of poverty, trauma, and violence. As you have already heard today at least once, the American Public Health Association has identified policing as a public health crisis, specifically because it exacerbates instead of addresses the root causes of violence, preventable disease, and death. Cop City is an investment in the status quo as it leaves these structural drivers of harm untouched. It leaves communities under-resourced. It leaves life expectancy for many of our patients in poor and working class neighborhoods far too short, neighborhoods like those near the South River Forest. Cop City is an investment in a police state, which some of you may prefer, creating a false sense of security for some instead of health and safety for all, where police operate outside of any accountability and others have their civil rights trampled on. It is clear that in supporting Cop City, some of you would rather be managers of inequality instead of doing what's necessary to eliminate it. You seem content to manufacture scarcity, then criminalize those who act out of desperation. In Atlanta today, while the developers get tax breaks, our patients get sent to Rice Street. Health justice is about providing each individual and community with the resources to live healthy and thrive. Cop City is incompatible with this version of Atlanta. At a minimum, send this bill back to committee. Even better, invest in people, not police. Vote no, stop Cop City.
Thank you. Thank you. We're now at number 109. I want to thank Councilmember Westmoreland for filling in for the chair. Let me read through the next 109 through 120. Catherine Maddox, Joe Purley, Sarah McClintock, Josh Cass, Jay Crawford, Susan Benjamin, Gloria Tutuk, I believe, Julietta Barrett, and Alex Joseph. Catherine Maddox, you'll have up to 6 minutes due to yielded time.
Hello, comrades and potential future comrades. Anybody? I want to firstly honor this profound moment of togetherness that we are enjoying, the silver lining of this dark time which united us, and these multitude synchronistic moments which I heard earlier cynically misunderstood as fake alliances. Thank you to the new friends who so generously donated me their time, as well as to Miss McLeod, who you all know is the champion for rent control, and who is also mother to my friend Ebony, with whom I have such amazing memories from back in my fun days. I had briefly posted on Instagram last night that I would like extra time, and Miss McLeod surprised me when I saw her this morning when she let me know that her friend had already given me her time. I endeavored to make it worthwhile. After the isolation from COVID especially, this is so warm and so meaningful. This is what community looks like. I never usually get the time for salutations, which is a shame, because aside from our NPUs, whose wishes you ignored regarding Cop City in particular, this is the governing body with whom those of us who lived here are supposed to have a close relationship. Aside from Lily, my council person, I can't say I have any kind of relationship with any of you. Aside from Winston, who I met at my job, who I want to commend for abstaining from voting during the Finance Committee last week, as well as for responding to my post about the homeless man being harassed by the police in our neighborhood. I hope the grocery store had information about him, and I hope he is okay and no longer in jail for stealing that box of Captain Crunch treats. It's a shame he had to go there at all, simply for being hungry. I hope you keep that same energy today and vote alongside the people instead of the administration, which is actively perpetuating a fraud against us. And who will suffer the most from this? Who in my district will be made to endure the mock attacks in the fake city in every scenario imaginable? Whose water will continue to be polluted to Flint-level proportions? A neighborhood which is 85% black. When the mayor attended that MPU meeting and residents told him not to put Cop City in a black neighborhood, he accidentally answered the question when he said, "What do you want me to do? Atlanta is 50% black." In solidarity with my district neighbors, I would urge Andre not to exacerbate a looming environmental disaster in the South River Forest, which Dr. Jackie Eccles calls environmental racism at its finest. The whole process stinks to high heaven. You paraded in front of us fake town halls with the comments turned off, solely comprised of APF, Schneerbum, and yes men. And when an environmentalist managed to make her way on that panel, voiced her criticism stemming from her expertise, she was booted right off. Others quit working to advocate for the project after Tortuguita was murdered, but still the mayor was not through quelling dissent. Which brings us into this week when the Solidarity Fund was dragged in on bogus charges. The people who have been protecting our due process, ensuring that those of us who feel strong enough to call out your foul after flagrant foul don't have to end up languishing in Fulton County Jail as long as many other people do. Is it feeling fascist-y to you yet? Because the indictment of this body is when you thought it was just a bunch of tree huggers in the forest, these very real issues of human rights, democracy, public safety seem to most of you of very little importance. But as a result of the integrity and bravery of those few, the organizations are finally stepping up, and the media is coming around, galvanizing around an effort that should have been their rallying cry in the first place, which is this: all life is irreplaceable, and I find you cowardly for wasting so much of it so easily. You left Lily out on a limb because we, her constituents, weren't going to give her the option of silence, instead of collectivizing around the values the majority of you were voted for in the first place. I've spent a lot of time at the Capitol, and I've seen people whose values are diametrically opposed to my own engage in act of political courage, which I have seen little to no evidence of in City Hall. Republicans taking a walk on the trans bill rather than vote in favor of something medical professionals and parents pleaded with them not to. Voting no on one of the governor's pet voucher bills that would only serve to further defund our public school system, despite Kemp showing up in person in a failed attempt to make them fall in line. The moral of this story is that you do not have to fail alongside this mayor, and thus far you have been failing profoundly. You can continue to harangue the firefighters who just want a place to train and equipment by shoving them into this ridiculous propaganda idea that their job is so enmeshed with that of the police. And you can continue to further harm police officers by drenching them in a violence from which none of us will escape. Or you can be like a Georgia Republican on a good day, when they aren't too busy delegitimizing bodily autonomy and criminalizing homelessness, to play the tape out far enough to see just how bad it would be for everybody if they voted yes, themselves included. I would hope that by now it's resonating with you that this thing isn't getting built. What I want to know is, how long will it take for you to admit it to yourself? And how much is that going to cost us? And don't even get me started on the money.
Thank you. Joe Pearley or Piercy? I'm sorry, I can't read your. Peary, thank you. Joe Peary, you have 4 minutes due to yielded time. Staff will grab it right there for you.
My name is Joe Peary. I live on Flat Shoals Road in the East Atlanta Village, so I'm very close to the old Atlanta prison farm. I've been touring the prison farm, taking hikes and giving other people tours there, and hiking myself over a decade. Back in 2015, Mary Norwood, I hope you remember, we went on a walk out there, and at the time you said you thought a park would be a great idea. In fact, the only thing that you didn't like was the name of it, the prison farm. You didn't want it to be called the prison farm, you wanted it to be called Eastside Park, so it could rival the West Side Park, which is all the glory at the time at the Bellwood Quarry. So I think maybe you can understand why I feel so deeply about this park. I want to thank Jason Dozier for helping protect our entrenchment creek, which runs on the east side of the park. Thank you so much. And I want to thank Liliana Bakhtiari for helping so much. She's my representative that's here. So I want to make sure, do you all have those maps in front of you? Because, you know, there's been a lot of talk about just things being made up, people not understanding what's going on. I understand what's going on. I know exactly what the prison farm is. Thank you. This is the prison farm. It's 296 acres total. This is the entire prison farm. What APF has done, what they were granted by this council in 2021 was 85 acres. That's over twice as much as they need. But they were granted it nonetheless. What have they taken? 171 acres. That's this total land. You can look on the tax records. It's 171 acres. So I don't want to hear any more about they're taking 85 acres and we're getting the rest of it for a park. It's a lie, okay? What they've taken is every tree. This is a drone shot that was taken this last month. Is showing the 85 acres that has been clear cut. That's 85 acres scraped to the ground. That's what they've done. So what is left is 125 acres of the prison farm. It's on this map. If anybody can show me something different, I want to hear it, because what Mayor Dickens has promised us was a 300-acre park. I don't know how you get a 300-acre park out of 296 acres. Now, I know there's a little 15-acre chunk over here, a little 33-acre chunk over here that's where the landfill was. That's not part of this prison farm. And that's not part of what we agreed on in 2017, what the city council agreed on for the beloved community, is a forest that we can heal in. When I've been giving these tours in the forest, I've had a lot of time to talk to people, including Mary, including a lot of other people that you've talked to today that have been changed by what happens when you go to the forest. I go for my mental health, and I go for my physical health. It's a place I can go ride my bike. It's a place I can go be in peace. It's a place that's just 30 minutes from my house. And it's a place that can change your mind if you go there and you accept it and you listen to what happens when you calm down and you have a positive mindset and you don't listen to all the buzzing and all the craziness that's going on around us. That's what we need.
Time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah McClintock. Sarah McClintock. Sarah McClintock, due to yielded time, you'll have up to 4 minutes.
Should be 6 minutes. I was yielded time by person at 113 and 312. Number 312, Joy Wasson, yielded me.
Yes, thank you. 6 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, and I'm happy to be here. My name is Sarah McClintock, as was just stated. I want to speak to all of you as directly and from the heart as I possibly can. That's what's recommended when we come up to speak here, to speak from the heart. And you've heard people speaking from their heart a lot, and you've heard so many important, moving, convincing messages. I want to especially address my own council member, Amir Farouqi. Thank you for being here. I wish that some of the others who are not in the room right now could be here as well. There is room. Maybe you can tell the fire marshal. I want to address Alex Vaughn, who has stepped out apparently, but he is the council member representing the district in which I work. I'm a professor at Emory University, where I teach in the Department of Religion. My area of specialization is in ancient Buddhist texts. It's pretty arcane in a lot of respects, but I find things there that can apply to our present moment. Some of what I heard earlier tonight was, and this afternoon, moved me greatly, and that included the speech by the Reverend Meko Shiban Kernel of the Muskogee Nation, who has come back to his homeland to speak to us about the value of this land, the sacredness of this land, and also the young man who spoke right before him, whose name I didn't catch, but who said he was an artist, who moved me greatly in his depiction of life, something so profound, something we shall not squander. He spoke about wanting to live. I feel there are a host of reasons for all of us to oppose this police training facility. We don't want it. We don't want it because it doesn't contribute to life. It's not an institution of peace. It's not a way forward for our city that we love. I know that you love Atlanta. You say you love Atlanta. I think the people here love Atlanta, and not just Atlanta, but as the other young person who's a member of the Muskogee Nation spoke about this land, which is much older even than Atlanta, and all of the ancestors and people who've lived and worked here. I know that you love them as well. We know that increasing militarized policing doesn't make people safer. We share a common goal: safety, peace in our city. And people have spoken about the environmental racism that is inherent in the very act of placing this particular facility in this particular place that has already seen so much violence, so much oppression, so much suffering, so much toil, so much enslavement. We know that this particular land has a long and tragic history. And public memory matters. What we put on this land matters. How we think about this land matters. I believe that the people who oppose this training facility do so out of love. They may seem angry to you. They may seem upset. They may seem different. They may seem unruly. But they are coming to you out of love. And I think we need to join. All people have basic human needs. We all have needs for safety. And it's not that that's in dispute, but how? How do we achieve safety? How do we achieve this common good that you have pledged yourself to? I have empathy for you. You are sitting here for a long time listening to us. But you need to open your heart and really listen if we're going to come to any kind of mutual understanding. The Atlanta Police Foundation wants you to believe that a new training facility will make Atlanta safer, but many people have spoken here about lived experience that belies that. We need to remember that fighting at the level of strategy doesn't make sense if we are not able to see each other as human beings. And I've written to you, Councilmember Bond, and some of your others, please, I implore you, you have a choice. Say no to the facility, or at the very least, back to committee so that you can listen better and come to a solution that suits all of Atlanta. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Josh Cass. Josh Cass. Josh Cass, you'll have up to 4 minutes due to yielded time.
This is yet again directed to Post 1 through 3, District 9, Council President and the Mayor. I hope you, Councilman Hillis, can make it a point to endure a constituent today since you failed to do so on May 15th. It's insulting that you, Councilman Hillis, can barely manage to properly and routinely attend MPUG meetings prepared and ready to answer questions about your duties as an elected official, but can haphazardly send your staffer, Alan Holmes, to tell us what you claim are priorities for District 9, if only you had more public support, as Alan relayed to us. It's equally egregious that you, Councilman Hillis, sent this poor staffer to us on May 18th to state that you would love to support increased funding for maintaining our parks, works and keeping our roads in proper condition after you just introduced ELMS 32702 to increase pay for police and ELMS 32703 to allocate a further $33.5 million for Cop City the preceding Monday. It's as if you, Councilman Hillis, weren't in the chamber when I specifically called out maintaining our roadways being a top priority as opposed to further funding the police during the public comment section on May 15th. Allow me to remind you that you were not present. On your birthday, no less. Not sure where you're from, but most of us don't celebrate the blessing of another year of life by financially supporting those who take it. You insult our intelligence in public and try to reconcile in private, and I won't tolerate any further disrespect. The police are the only first responders that have an image problem. Firefighters, EMTs, nor hero units have an image problem. Firefighters don't respond to fire alarms with flamethrowers and get upset when they're told to use water. There is no war on police. There is no such thing as a blue life. The thin blue line is a tantrum of immature and petulant adult children. If your egos are too fragile to accept the rightful criticism of your tactics, then quit. If you can't do your job without somebody constantly hovering over your shoulder, then say it. We'll hold your timid hands at every step. You've already forfeited any career aspirations you may have had. We live here. Y'all have made it abundantly clear that y'all just work here. Comfortable, go somewhere else. Atlanta has no place for you. The police have they've been given or preservation of life. If I had 57 bullets, I could assassinate every member in this chamber with 3 shots each and still have 9 bullets left over. I dare any single one of you to tell me that you believe that is justified, reasonable, or acceptable as standard operating procedure. Wars have been fought over much less. What's the difference between a bullet and a cop? If a bullet kills someone, you'll know it's been fired. If you have a problem, call the police, then you'll have 2 problems. Money or violence. You seem to only respond to these 2 categories, using one to beget the other. Can't even get the correct dates on your signed off warrants, but expect us to believe that you have the competency and due diligence for a $100 million project that we have told you repeatedly that we do not need and we do not want. The May 31st deployment of militarized police unit on a residential street to raid a bail fund on suspicion of white-collar financial crimes is tyrannical. Tyrannical entities must be demolished by any means necessary. You have the option to resign willingly, be cast out politically, or be removed violently. The choice you make today on this bill will be inextricably linked to the method that will be chosen. You will vote no. You will vote no. You will vote no. All of you will vote no today, and you will replant every tree you uprooted 100 times over. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. If you build it, we will burn it. I yield my time.
Thank you. Let's keep it moving. Next up is Jay Crawford. Next up is Jay Crawford. Jay Crawford. Let's keep it moving. Jay Crawford. Jay Crawford. Sorry? 2 minutes. We're number 116.
Beloved community, I just want to say first and foremost, we are all traumatized by our friends, the raid of the teardown, and I just want to say I hope that everyone is healing as we hope our comrades are healing. I've done food justice work in this city, and I know them personally for 11 years, and I can tell you they are some of the most kindest, kind-hearted people I've ever met in my life. The gentleman who spoke and had his back turned to you picks up the compost of the food that is left over at the 4 distros we have each week, and every little morsel of parsley is composted. Every old cucumber is composted. What you did to them is so wrong that I hope you can figure that out, that was so wrong. That's how I wanted to start. But what I'm really here to say is good evening, No one wants their home to burn down. We need trained firefighters, but would a burn tower be built in the backyard of Christ the King Catholic Church on Peachtree Street in Buckhead? That's why. Why is it being built in the backyard of Sanctuary Village of Power on Constitution Road in the southeast side? Because it is literally being built in their backyard, and that is wrong. I'm from Kirkwood, Hosea Williams, unbought and unbossed. We speak the truth here. We speak the truth here. We do not need a burn tower at a church. And guess what? They had no idea that burn tower was going in the back of their church. They had no idea that that firing range was on their property until 3 weeks ago. You didn't even tell them. You know who told them? I told them.
Time's expired. Next is Susan Benjamin. Susan Benjamin. Bill 117, Susan Benjamin. Susan Benjamin. Gloria Tatum or Tater? Tatum. Joyetta Burnett. You'll have up to 2 minutes.
We need to ask Mayor Dickens now to cancel the lease on Cop City because it needs to end. Because the earth needs help, the climate needs help, and we need clean air, clean water, clean soil, and we need a healthy earth to survive. And most of all, to me, the violence that police are doing to the citizens of the state is injustice. Mr. Jamari Robertson, shot 76 times. I'm weeping and crying. We have to go back to court June 21st and 22nd for this young man that was an innocent person that was violated by many different police in one day. A grenade was thrown at him. Look at that. Look. Just the grenade destroying a human life. It's injustice, and it's wrong. And he should not have had to been violated by 76 bullets in his body. This is tragic. I'm sad and I'll cry because of this young man and all the others that have been slaughtered by the police. When we're saying that we need a police, why do we need them? To slaughter? To throw grenades at people that's innocent, that's not doing anything to them? And how can you all justify building a cop city when this is what they're going to continue to do? This is wrong on this planet Earth, and we need Earth justice. Thank you.
You don't call by name. You don't call by name. Did she call you? She didn't call you by name. It's all right if you call by name. Next will be Alex Joseph. Let's keep moving. Guys. Alex Joseph. Alex Joseph. Alex Joseph's up next. You'll have 4 minutes due to yielded time. Let's keep moving, guys. We're at 120. We've got to get to 360 and beyond. So let's keep moving. Guys, the longer we take, the more people have to leave. We've already skipped over some people. So let's be respectful and keep moving. Ms. Joseph, you have up to 4 minutes.
Let's skip the council people. My name is Alex Joseph. I live in District 5. I was born and raised in Atlanta. And pertinent to this conversation, I'm a former state and federal prosecutor. That means that unlike any members of the council, I have been directly involved with sending people to prison. And I'm here to tell you that prosecutors and police are not essential to our safety. Let me tell you one reason that has not been discussed why Cop City is a bad idea. When I am talking to regular folks, trying to explain why I am passionate about this issue and this issue in particular, there is one fact that always convinces them. It is that Atlanta PD has access to a state-of-the-art training facility in Forsyth, Georgia. It already exists. It doesn't need to be built. Frankly, it doesn't need to be expanded. But here is the reason why we should all fight for one statewide training facility. If every police force is allowed to have their own facility, it becomes an arms race. Who can do it bigger and badder? Also, when it comes to reforms, when the day comes that I hope, for example, we outlaw pit maneuvers, it is much easier to make the call to one facility, that facility in Forsyth, Georgia, and say, hey, pit maneuvers, they're now illegal, than it is to go to the over 200 plus policing agencies in the state of Georgia. We need one agency, one training facility. I was asked to speak about accreditation. Atlanta Police Department will not lose its accreditation if it does not have its own specific training facilities. After leaving the prosecutor's office, after leaving the U.S. Attorney's office, I went into private practice. I'm now a partner at a law firm, and we represent cities and counties when they get sued. Most cities in the state of Georgia do not have their own police force. All police officers, in order to be accredited in the state of Georgia, have to be post-certified. Guess who runs the facility in Forsyth, Georgia? Post. Unlike the Atlanta Police Foundation, and unlike the city of Atlanta, Post has experienced training officers. Why would Atlanta continue to operate facilities when the facilities that the city has run for years are in horrible disrepair? Why would we trust the Atlanta Police Foundation to run facilities when they have no experience doing so? Finally, I will say that the city of Atlanta is one of 144 policing agencies in the state that is accredited through the state. When that process happens, that means that every 3 years, the city of Atlanta throws open its doors to the Atlanta Police Department to be visited and to be reaccredited by the state. They do not look at the training centers. They look at how it stores evidence, how they store records. Those things Atlanta police can do well, and those things require a classroom. They do not require acres of an outdoor police training facility, and they certainly do not require this. I now yield my time to my husband. This is his first time speaking at City Hall, because that's how persuasive I am.
Thank you. Next up, so we're at 122. I'll call the next round of names, though I can't read some of the handwriting. So David Main, maybe, Lee Day, Ernest Law, Vic Kennedy, Caitlin Brewster, Abundia Tristram, John Meyer, and Carl Charles. This would be David.
Yes.
What's the last name?
Martin.
Martin.
Terrible handwriting.
Sorry. David Martin. You'll have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you for having me. My name is David Martin. I live in District 5. My hope is that the council votes no for the funding and ultimately for the project as a whole. Numerous reasons to oppose this project were discussed ad nauseum during public comment on May 15th. However, I'm here to talk about why that public comment was inadequate. I'm here to talk about fiscal accountability. For almost 2 years, the deal sold to city taxpayers, and the deal I read about almost daily in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, is that Cop City will cost city taxpayers $30 million. And the Atlanta Police Foundation, a private organization separate from the police department and city coffers, would pay the remaining $60 million of the $90 million project. On September 8, 2021, Mayor Lance Bottoms stated, quote, "The city's contribution will be through a 30-year, $1 million per year lease starting in fiscal year 2024, or a single contribution through a general obligation bond," end quote. That $30 million number was repeated like gospel for 2 years. Following the public outcry on May 15th, Mayor Dickens ran an opinion piece on May 17th, again spotlighting the city's $31 million contribution. On May 24th, the Atlanta Community Press Collective realized and published what select few have known for years, that the city taxpayers would actually be paying at least $67 million of the $90 million. Add the 10% elasticity clause plus a $1 million gymnasium line, and this balloons to $34 million. This chasm in truth was finally acknowledged by the mayor's office on May 26. All of these hours of public comment, and nobody stood up and told us the truth. As of Sunday morning, the Atlanta Police Foundation is still publishing on their website the city will only contribute $30 million. How far over budget? How much will the real cost be? Vote no, and at minimum send to committee to examine the real cost. Thank you.
Next is Lee, I believe it's Lee Day or Lee Dari. Yes, thank you. What's your last name, Lee?
Dang, like the
Dang,
expletive.
thank you.
Yeah, I got rat handwriting.
2 minutes.
I'm coming here recently. I only moved out here very recently. I came here from Florida. A big reason why I moved here from Florida is because of the policies of Ron DeSantis and the way he's treating people down there. Moving here, I have a lot of community down there, and I travel as much as I can. I go to Ohio a lot, especially, and a lot of people talk about outside agitators and stuff like that. I don't consider them outside. As someone who's technically outside, from the beginning of this, I still had my eyes on it because I understood chances are it's not just Georgia that's going to be training there. Chances are the stuff I was seeing in the streets for 2020 for the BLM protests, I'm going to see even more difficult, even more bloody than before, after this happens, because they're going to get better at it. I am under the impression that this community really doesn't fucking want it. And please, I only got 2 minutes. Please, I'm begging you. And I really, really, really hope that as someone who just moved here, that I can agree with these people and live here. Because they're so warm, they're so kind, and I don't think I'll be able to if I've got a feeling in my gut, this is going to be like Florida. Because Florida is terrifying. A lot of people are leaving as fast as they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ernest Law. You'll have up to 2 minutes.
I'm a local artist, and I was here last month speaking. I'm going to do it poorly again today. I'm not good at this. After the people spoke our minds last month, Councilmember Michael Julian Bond said in an interview, this is not a choice, that you know what, we just won't do it. This isn't a want, this is a need, and we have to meet that need. Whose needs are you meeting, council member? It's pretty obvious from the gathered crowd, it's not ours. Speaking out against Cop City, that is not what the people want or need, unless you are saying that you know what the people need better than we do. You say it's not a choice, but that's a lie. It is a choice that you're making. In opposition to the will of the people, if it were not a choice, you wouldn't need to vote on it. You personally and together are making a choice, have been making a choice to ignore the will of the people of this city, and why? I could speculate on the answer to that question. Maybe it's fear. You want militarized police force to better deal with us. We have taken to the streets because you are not listening to us. The city is obviously willing to use military force to brutalize, intimidate, and abuse us. Sit down, do as you are told, or we will put you in prison. We will kill you. The message you are sending is we are afraid, so we will make you afraid of us. Murdering protesters, arresting us, charging us with terrorism, arresting our support structure, that is intimidation. It's fascist, and Cop Silly will only make things worse. It could be money, it could be greed. It's usually about money. Putting,
Time's expired. Councilmember Bond, I don't believe you were called out by name. Councilmember Bond, were you called out by name?
Yes, I was.
Oh, okay, sorry, go ahead.
And I'll be brief because there'll be time for me to speak when the item comes up. But to clarify my statements, when I say it's not a choice, city council members are not just elected representatives of the individual voters or persons who are in the city. We're also the fiduciaries of the city. And as fiduciaries of the city, whether it's the Public Works Department, the Police Department, Law Department, we are responsible for the facilities that those employees use. We are responsible for providing them with equipment, salary, and benefits. So whether it's the deal that's before us today or some other iteration, eventually the City of Atlanta will have to build equipment or acquire equipment, build facilities for our departments. And that is a fact.
Please do not shout down the council members. We are all letting everybody from the public speak. Let Councilmember Bond speak. Let Councilmember Bond speak. Go ahead, Councilmember Bond.
I just want to respond and then I will.
Please, let him speak so that you can also speak later.
I just wanted to respond to the gentleman and then I will close. But many of the things that you all mentioned, public transportation, the city is not responsible for. The health care. Mr. President.
Would you please let the council members speak? He was called out by name. He was called out. He was called out by. He was called by name. He gets a chance to respond, and I would expect more from this crowd. So please allow Councilmember Bond to speak. He was called by name. It is per council rules that he gets to respond.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members of the audience. Many of the things that you all have mentioned, the City of Atlanta cannot do legally. We cannot provide health care. We cannot provide social services. We cannot provide...
Please allow the council member to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, you have all had your chance to speak. Would you please, and you will, if you would allow the process to continue. Councilmember Bond is responding to being called by name. Councilmember Bond.
Those items are responsibilities of different governments, mostly Fulton County or the school system or MARTA, that is an independent authority. They're not within the City of Atlanta's charter. Yes, that's true. We do work closely with the county. But if you examine the charter of the county, if you examine the charter of the school system, those are things that legally the city of Atlanta cannot provide, with the exception of
Would you please allow Councilmember Bond to finish so that we can go back to public comment? Please allow Councilmember Bond to finish.
I'm trying to respond to the gentleman who spoke and questioned what I said in the media, and I think it would be fair to allow him to have his answer. I'm just waiting for it to be quiet so I can respond so that everyone can hear. I mean, I can't use my 2 minutes if people are talking when I'm talking. We can all sing at the same time, but we can't all talk at the same time.
We are simply making it harder for other people to speak later on. Would you please allow the council member to finish so we can move on with public comment? That's enough. It's enough. Let him speak.
That's an inaccurate statement. But to close, so I can address the gentleman who was kind enough to point out something that I said to try to give him an adequate response, is that many of the things that were said at the podium, many of the things that people believe that the city can do, legally we cannot do it because of our charter. And secondly,
So stop lying. Just let him finish his statement, please. Councilmember Bond.
And just finally to close, it is our responsibility that all of our departments, that at some point, that we have to build facilities, that we have to supply. Well, I can sit here all night too. I'm very comfortable sitting here all night. As a matter of fact, for those of you all who may not have been here, it was the parliamentary action that we took so that everyone can have their voice to speak. I'm simply trying to respond to the gentleman who called my name, which under our rules I'm allowed to respond, to give him an adequate response. And so we're fiduciaries of the city, and at some point, every department, every employee deserves that we have to take care of those facilities. We have to take care of the equipment, their salaries and benefit. So even if you take the police foundation wasn't involved in this at all, at some point, the city of Atlanta would have to build facilities. They would have, yes, you do. Because if you don't provide employees, and there are lawyers in this audience, if you don't provide employees with the equipment, if you don't provide,
Would the chamber please allow the council member to finish, please? Council member has been given the floor. Allow him to finish, and we will move on to public comment. Councilmember Bond.
If you don't provide, if we, council members, who are fiduciaries of the city, don't provide the employees with the equipment, the facilities, salaries and benefits that they deserve, we run afoul of federal labor law. And so, yes, you are the city, but we're the fiduciaries that at this time are in place to make those decisions and to make sure that those facilities and benefits and et cetera are in place for the people that we employ that work for all of us. And that's, they work for the taxpayers and voters in the city of Atlanta, and they deserve consideration. And I will withdraw, Mr. President.
Mr. Bond. Next up is Vic Kennedy. Vic Kennedy is number 126. Caitlin Brewster. Abundia Tristram, or Tristern. Abundia Tristram?
Yes.
You'll have 4 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Abundia Tristan, and I'm an immigrant. I'm Nahuatl and Apache. I've been in Atlanta for 17 years, been part of the community. And when I was coming to this place, I was so excited and happy to be in the homelands of the Muskogee that are my relatives too. And I've been part of the Muskogee ceremonies and traditional festivities there for 17 years, so I was really, really excited to be here and to be in the Black Mecca and learn from civil rights leaders. And so when I came here, I was so happy and I learned so much. This is a great community for me, and I was not prepared to see this beauty and abundance of this city, represented in this forest where I used to live close to Wilani Forest. And I was not also prepared to see this amazing community that is here now, that has been fighting for 2 years to defend Wilani Forest and has been caring for each other, loving and helping each other 2 years here. And this is the community that made me proud, And I learned that this land has been a steward for a millennia. And I'm saying with blood and with tears and with sweat from Muskogee and Black people. I mean, this is not just figurative. Imagine people working here with their bare hands for millennia in this land. This is the land you are all in. This is what has authority, the land and the people of the land that have built a relationship that is sacred with this land. You are sitting there. This is the 3rd time we come here to tell you we don't want Cup City. And people have come from everywhere. We have disabled people, we have young, old people, we have all kinds of people coming here and showing this amazing show of civility. And you don't listen. This is the 3rd time. You are sitting here pretending to be all important when you are just hired. You are in these little chairs with these suits like you are CEOs and pretending to hear us. But we are not going to back down. And the world is listening now. I'm calling on everybody that has conscience in Atlanta and beyond. I'm calling in the queer community to be in the lookout and to be in red alert. Because if this facility is built, queer, trans people, Black people, indigenous people are going to be killed. And this blood, just like Tortuguita's blood, is going to be in each of your hands. And it's a shame on you. You have kids. You have family. And you are just doing business as usual. You are just performing. This is just ridiculous. I come from Mexico, and I thought this country is going to respect free speech. This is a fascist country, what I'm seeing. This is worse than third country. You are worse than third country. You have not done your job. So I don't know what you think about yourself, but we know that you are just servants of the people. The real power is outside here. It's in these people. No. And I urge you to vote no and to look in your conscience and to respect Black and indigenous people and their blood and their tears and their sweat in this land. Land is have authority, not any of you. So do a fucking job and say no to Cup City.
John Meyer. Next up is John Meyer. John Meyer is next. I believe it's Meyer. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I come here today as a citizen of this great city, having been born here to both my father, a civil rights lawyer, and my mother, who was a member of this very council many years ago. I have come here, Deborah McCarty. I grew up here, I was raised here, I have come back to live here, working here as an environmentalist, and above all, to your sakes, I have paid taxes to the city. I stipulate all this because I wish to show that the narrative, the opposition for this facility comes from outside of this community. The conduct of the last few years, but in the last few months by the police, I believe cannot be solved by shiny new buildings and dangerous new toys. From the tragic death of Tortuguita, who was shot 57 times, found with his hands up according to the autopsy report, to the individuals at the Solidarity Fund who were only arrested a few days ago, mere days before this meeting. Charges on which the presiding judge has also agreed would not stand, and at which many civil rights activists find chilling and concerning. I may be a single person among many here, but I believe to be better served towards methods that actually reduce crime, from the community development, the crisis intervention, social services, and affordable housing. I ask that the council members please listen to the constituents that have elected you all to represent and vote towards services that offer a helping hand rather than to be stamped down by a baton. I yield the rest of my time.
Next up is Carl Charles. Carl Charles. And let me call the next round of folks. Jessica Tin, Olive O'Reilly, Joel Crum, Lila Flores, Andres Yara, Garrett Brand, and Z Fitzgerald. I can't quite read the first name. Jessica Tin. Due to yielded time, you'll have up to 8 minutes.
So let's examine our police training by listening to them. This is selected radio traffic from the police last week while they were working a part-time handling a balloon release for the murder of a 16-year-old girl.
As long as the shooter wanted to. Yep. That goes for vigils, barbecues, parties, all that.
Barbecues will last as long as the shooter wants it to, is what he said.
That'd be a good stop. Easy killer. Hey, this guy right here in the traffic vest, if he jaywalked, we'll have to put gang charges on him. Because he's throwing up gang signs, just a heads up. So it's going to be jaywalking with that gang charge hat on him. I'd be impressed if he